The Premier and Prime Minister both talk about next steps when it comes to Donald Trump, with the Premier, Doug Ford, revealing more details about what American officials could be planning and how Canada should respond.
Protesting the province's plan to remove bike lanes escalates to arrests, with Premier confirming his government will follow through despite calls to cancel upcoming contracts.
And the city unveils additional steps to combat coyote attacks that have shaken a number of Toronto neighborhoods. We're live with the latest update tonight.
This is Live at 5. Hello, I'm Arda Zakarian.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. On the eve of Doug Ford's new cabinet reveal, the Ontario government continues to focus on Donald Trump's trade war. And the Premier revealed more details about his conversations in Washington today.
What we're working at is making sure that we're first in line for exemptions. And we told the administration very clearly how we feel these tariffs are going to hurt the American people. Yes, it's going to hurt Canada, but it's going to hurt the American people.
With the trade war, Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke to reporters about his upcoming call with Donald Trump.
I think what President Trump wants, he wants several things. One is he wants to end the fentanyl crisis in the United States. I respect that. He wants good, high-paying jobs in America. He wants more investment in America. He wants repatriation of many American industries and firms to the United States. So, and I fully respect that. I think he will respect that as Prime Minister of Canada, I want to end the fentanyl crisis in Canada. I want to grow good, high-paying jobs in Canada. And of course, I want to protect with my colleagues and reaffirm and reinforce our sovereignty of all of Canada.
Meantime, Americans are already feeling the pinch of President Donald Trump's tariffs. New home buyers are being hit hard as the cost of construction is being driven up by duties on lumber. The National Association of Home Builders is warning that the cost of a new home could rise by as much as $10,000 U.S. The impending trade war is also dragging down the markets and stoking worries about the economy, which could also keep potential home buyers on the sidelines.
Meanwhile, here at home, hundreds of cyclists gathered at Queen's Park today to protest the removal of bike lanes.
They oppose Premier Ford's bill that'll see lanes removed from Bloor, Yonge, and University Avenue. Cyclists say ripping out the lanes puts them at risk. It doesn't ease congestion, and it's bad for the environment.
Some protesters made their way to the engineering firm Stantec, which was hired by the province to work on bike lane removal. Toronto police say 2 people were arrested for trespassing and removed from the property.
And a statement from Stantec reads in part, in regards to this morning's protest outside of our office, we respect the right of community to voice their opinions through peaceful protest. Moreover, we also appreciate that our team members, also local Toronto residents, were able to safely enter their workplace.
About a month and a half ago, my father died. And every time, we knew he was going to pass for about a year before he went. And every time we went to see him, about once a week, we would take our bikes because that saved us about an hour round trip. That means that because of my bike, I got to spend an extra 52 hours with my father. That stretched out time that we had for our last Christmas, our last New Year's, our last summer day together. And Doug Ford wants to take that away.
It brings the encouragement of riding bicycles. It brings good health. It brings convenience, but safety, I think, is the biggest one that is on my mind.
Important to be here today because safety and health matters, not to mention the health of the planet. And bikes are the way to go. It's the fastest way around the city. It's the safest way for me, and certainly I want it to be safe for my kids and their kids.
I've lived in Toronto for almost 20 years, so I've been biking ever since I moved here for university. And now that there are bike lanes on major arteries, I feel a lot safer. I've had a lot less incidents where I nearly get side-doored or hit by a car. So for me, it's a privilege that I think a lot of Torontonians enjoy that I don't want taken away.
Mayor Chow says she's hoping there's a compromise to be found.
I am still working hard on finding a win-win solution, and cyclists need to be protected. They need to be safe, and we don't want lives lost or limbs hurt. So that's really important. So the win-win situation, for example, what we can do is find ways to bring back a car lane in some instance and still maintain the bike lane.
Now, the province says it's not opposed to bike lanes in general, but wants them removed from major arteries downtown.
The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario is raising the alarm on the province's special education system.
ETFO has released a new report calling on the Ford government to make schools more welcoming and inclusive for children with disabilities and provide all children with the tools they need to succeed. That report includes 27 recommendations, which are based on research, stats, expert analysis, and input from educators. And ETFO's president, Karen Brown, says more needs to be done by the province to address these failures in the classroom.
Here we are, 23 years later, and nothing has changed. In fact, it's worse. We are seeing the same issues that were clearly identified so many years ago, continue to fester and deepen. Despite all the research, recommendations, and countless voices of those working with students directly, the provincial government has failed to take meaningful actions to address the concerns. And so, today, we are facing a crisis in our classrooms. We are witnessing the negative impacts of conservative neglect of special education every single day.
Minister of Education Jill Dunlop has released a statement which reads in part, since coming into government, we have improved funding for special education supports every single year. And by the end of 2025, funding is projected to total almost $4 billion. We will continue to work with parents and educators to meet the changing needs of our classroom. But it's absolutely critical that school boards ensure all funds they are provided by our government, including for special education, go straight to meeting the learning needs of all our students.
And since 2000, the Ontario Ministry of Education has required each district school board to submit a special education plan every 2 years.
Let's head over to Adwa now. So for a look at our roads outside, 13 degrees. You know, if you're stuck in traffic, just roll your windows down, blast the music. It'll get you through, hopefully.
You know what, it will. You won't be moving very fast out there. It is rush hour. It's very slow. And then in the mix of the slowdowns, a lot of problems, Arda. If you're traveling on the westbound lanes of the Gardiner, trying to get out of the downtown core, it's not the long-term construction this time. It's a collision. This is the westbound lanes of the Gardiner through York. 2 left lanes are blocked. There are 3 lanes through here, and at least you have that right lane that is available. Again, it is very, very slow from pretty much before Cherry Street as a result. And then headed on the southbound 427, they did move the camera. Let me see if I can spot it on my other camera. This is southbound on the 427, the ramp that takes you to the westbound 401. This ramp is still not accessible. It's been that way for over an hour and a half. That is following a pretty serious collision. It was involving a transport. Good sign they got that transport off the roadway. And it looks like we have some problems on the eastbound lanes of the 401. This is just as you make your way through Kipling. It is the center lane. Actually, it looks like it's the right, or maybe it's the center lane. There's a lane getting by. Center lane blocked. This is following a collision as well. On city streets, crews on scene of a collision blocking lanes on Yonge and Steeles. I'll send it back to you both.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
Thank you, Adjoa. A man has been charged after traveling more than double the speed limit on Highway 401 in Whitby.
Police say on Thursday around 11:30 p.m., 2 vehicles were observed traveling at speeds more than 200 kilometers per hour. One of the vehicles was located in the Taunton Road East and Highway 412 area. The driver was arrested. 19-year-old Ethan Northover has been charged with careless driving and stunt driving.
Also making news, the City of Toronto has provided an update on its response to the rising rate of coyote attacks, saying that problem animals should only be killed as a last resort.
For more on this, let's go live to CP24, Steve Ryan. Steve, we know there's a certain area in the city where these coyotes are hunting.
Yeah, that's right, Arda, and that is Fort York. There's a beautiful park here in Fort York, just off of Strawn Avenue, and that's where people like to take their dogs. And over the past few months, 4 months to be exact, people have reported seeing several coyotes in the area here, and some have had to run as a result of the coyotes, and dogs have been injured, and at least one dog was killed as a result of a coyote attack. So the City of Toronto has been taking this situation very seriously, and they certainly did consult with a group, a panel of 7 experts in coyote behavior. They've got decades of experience, and what they said was that the coyotes are demonstrating that the people that they are coming in contact with, they're comfortable enough that they are expecting food. So one of the big recommendations was to take food out of the equation. Stop feeding the coyotes, and anywhere where garbage is thrown, make sure there's no food there, because these coyotes are looking for food. And when it comes to the aggressive behavior of the coyotes when they were attacking dogs, this panel said that this was as a result of the reproductive season, so they need to be wary of that as well. Now, we did hear comment from the City of Toronto, including the Deputy Mayor, and here's some of what both of them said. Let's have a listen.
I've spoken with many residents fearful of their safety and the safety of their pets, and share their heartbreak at the harm and tragic loss of pets as a result of coyote incidents. My office with city staff have been in communication with community members, the Coyote Safety Coalition, on a weekly basis to continue to address and take action on this issue. Now, this expert panel, this Downtown Coyote Response Expert Panel, came together very quickly in the last 3 weeks in response to these immediate concerns.
The Wildlife Expert Panel's immediate responses, or recommendations, are to procure a specialized team to assess the target coyotes, apply adapted aversion techniques on them, monitor results, and report back to city staff on successes. Continue with aversion techniques that utilize bodies, voices, and handheld objects as objects to projectiles, bullets, or dogs, all of which will make coyotes overly reactive.
And I was like, what is he looking at?
One of the big recommendations was that the dogs stay on leashes here in the park. That, of course, will keep the dog close to you, and what the gentleman was referring to there was making a lot of noise if, in fact, you are approached by a coyote. And the city says that they'll continue to monitor the situation, and if it becomes more of a threat to public safety, they'll take further measures. Send it back to you guys.
Yeah, lots of people on edge about this. Steve, thanks so much for your reporting. It's now 5:12, 15 degrees out there, feeling really lovely. You're watching Live at 5.
And we are tracking developments on what could be coming next for Hudson's Bay and whether the liquidation process could be starting sooner than later. That's coming up. Welcome back. Lawyers were back in court today as Hudson's Bay awaits permission to start liquidating all of its stores after filing for creditor protection earlier this month.
CP24's Phil Perkins joins us live with the latest. You know, Hudson's Bay means a lot to Canadians, Phil, and for that reason, some are emotional about this.
Well, Lena, Arda, it's kind of ironic and unfortunate at the same time in this time where momentum towards buying Canadian is hitting full force right now, that a company that is 355 years old in the Hudson's Bay is potentially going out of business, following the way of Eaton's and Sears. Things like online shopping, specialty stores are really killing what was the department store. Hudson's Bay owes $1 billion, according to court documents, to landlords, suppliers, and fashion companies. And they're waiting on a court order to start, as you mentioned, Lena, liquidating its outlets. 96 stores across Canada. That's the Bay and Saks Fifth Avenue. And unfortunately, this puts the financial futures of over 9,000 employees in question right now. And as you mentioned, they filed for creditor protection back on March 7th. They were guaranteed that immediately that day. For Hudson's Bay, they've done whatever they could to try to make this work. Unfortunately, things like the pandemic, which kept people from leaving their homes and strictly shopping online, really hurt the Bay from really trying to stick around. They spent over $130 million in 2021 and 22 to try to create some form of online shopping, but that just did not work. They cut the workforce, and now this tariff war between Canada and the U.S. has really hurt this legendary company. We heard from retail analyst Bruce Winder and historian Stephen Bound about the impact the Bay has had on this country.
Retail is a very tough market. It's low margin. Even if you're a great retailer, you still fail, especially when you're going international. I think HBC's problems are sort of unique, though. I mean, they're part of the department store sector, which has been in decline, and they've had some self-inflicted wounds as well over the last 10 years or so. But retail is a tough business, like I said, and going into Canada is not easy.
They arrived here in 1670 and set up their outposts on the frigid rim of Hudson's Bay. And they went through multiple iterations, multiple different business plans. They faced bankruptcy or insolvency or were almost forced into irrelevancy multiple times over the course of that, that really long history. And they always managed to reinvent themselves and come up with a slightly different business model and progress into the future. That happened at least 3 or 4 different times. I don't know whether it's going to be successful. Well, obviously it's not. I mean, it's going to entirely disappear. And as a historian, I find that to be, very sad.
And we're here at the Hudson's Bay Scarborough Town Center, and there's a good amount of people making their way inside the department store. I'm not here daily, so I don't know if this is an unusual amount of people out here, but they could be searching for deals. But we've heard from retail analysts, they say don't expect 50, 60, 70% off right now because, of course, as I mentioned, the Bay owns $1 billion, so they can't be gouging prices really that much right on the get-go once they start liquidating. So expect anywhere between 10 to 20% over the next coming days. And then you can see the 60% off, the real deals. But again, retail analysts are telling CP24 some of the inventory that you could be shopping for on deep discounts might not be, the top, the most coveted. So again, if you're looking for deals, just be patient. Back to you.
Thank you, Phil. Actually, I do go to that particular bay that you're at quite often, and I have to say I was there today earlier, and the traffic is increased. I would say that there are lots more people in there hunting for their discounts, for sure. Thank you so much. As the spring real estate market gets underway, Zoocasa took a closer look at where condo buyers can find the best deal.
The Entertainment District and Liberty Village have the most condos for sale, followed by Regent Park and Corktown. The fastest selling condos are those priced between $1.15 million, especially in upscale neighborhoods. Zoocasa CEO Carrie Lysenko joined us earlier to talk about these findings.
Right now, the downtown area and Liberty Village represent 30% of all of the available condo inventory in the city. And so we're seeing a sales to new listing ratio under 13%, which is almost unheard of. It presents a really positive opportunity for buyers to negotiate, especially in those areas. Regent Park, St. Jamestown, and Corktown, also over 800 listings currently available in that area. So again, a really positive market for buyers to potentially negotiate a deal.
Mississauga is the GTA's most in-demand condo market, keeping pace with Toronto's top-selling areas.
It is now 5:19, 16 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
A new study suggests property crime here in Toronto is 40% higher than New York City. We'll break down those numbers just ahead. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Property crime in Toronto is 40% higher than in New York.
That's according to a new study published by the Fraser Institute think tank. It found from 2019 to 2022, Thunder Bay had Ontario's highest rate of property crimes, which include burglary, theft, and auto theft. Toronto, Hamilton, and Windsor all ranked higher for property crime than New York and Detroit.
What was kind of revealing is, of course, that a lot of smaller urban centers seem to have very high property crime rates. I mean, the crime rates do tend to rise from east to west. I mean, the lowest crime rates in Canada tend to be in Atlantic Canada and actually in Quebec, and then they tend to get higher. And then within Ontario, the north generally tends to have higher crime rates than the south. But even there, what's interesting is that in terms of property crime, for example, Thunder Bay had the highest rates, but then London, Ontario came in second, which is, within southwestern Ontario.
Lethbridge, Alberta had the highest rate of any Canadian city, and Kelowna was second. Winnipeg, Manitoba is Canada's most violent city with the highest rate of violent crimes of all urban areas.
York Regional Police have opened a new substation in Kleinburg.
The new 3,600 square foot substation is located in a restored church at Islington Avenue, and it's the fourth of its kind in that region. It will give members of the community the ability to interact with police officers, file police reports, and receive information about crimes or policing in general. And Vaughan's Mayor Stephen Del Duca spoke about the significance of this today.
I lived in Vaughan for close to 40 years. We know that our city has always been safe. We know that our city today is safe, but we have an obligation. We have a responsibility to make sure that the resources are there, that the support is there, and that at the end of the day, those individuals who want to turn to a life of crime understand fully. Here in the city of Vaughan, they have no place. They are not welcome, and we will work day and night as a council with our partners at the provincial and federal government to make sure that they are kept off our streets, that our residents are kept safe, that our businesses can open and function well, and that the criminals stay behind bars where they belong.
York Regional Police Chief Jim McSween says this substation is important for the relationship between the community and the police.
Putting up brick and mortar here in Kleinburg puts officers that much closer to the people they serve. It enables us to increase our presence and our patrols in this area, and it allows officers to get to know residents and residents to get to know their local police officers. Keeping citizens safe and secure may be our mission at York Regional Police, but as I mentioned before, community safety is a shared responsibility. And so this partnership is invaluable. Because when our people work hand in hand with our community, we create a safe place for us all to live, work, enjoy, and raise our families.
And the facility will be staffed Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
It's 5:25, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5.
We are getting a new look at the sequel to Happy Gilmore and what is in store, the new film that's out in just months. Stay with us.
Guys hit it big now. I don't know where to start. Come on, brother. Grip it and rip it.
Welcome back. Netflix has dropped another trailer for Happy Gilmore 2.
I haven't swung a club in years. I'm a little intimidated. All these guys hit it big.
The film is a sequel to the original from 1996, starring Adam Sandler as a failed hockey player who takes up golf. Christopher McDonald, Julie Bowen, and Ben Stiller are among the actors to reprise their roles, while a number of professional golfers are set to make cameos. Happy Gilmore 2 is out July 25th on Netflix. I'm sure a lot of people will be watching.
Yes, absolutely. Very nostalgic. 5:28 right now, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Canada's oldest company and its customers are awaiting next steps in the creditor protection process. We'll tell you what is next for Hudson's Bay right after this. Stay with us.
The future of Canada's oldest company remains uncertain as we continue to monitor the latest in the ongoing court proceedings regarding Hudson's Bay.
And the Premier and Prime Minister both talking about next steps when it comes to Donald Trump, with Ford revealing more details about what Donald Trump could be planning next and how we should respond as a nation.
Protesting the province's plan to remove bike lanes escalates to arrest, with the Premier confirming his government will follow through despite calls to cancel upcoming contracts.
You're watching Live at 5.
Hello, I'm Arda Zakarian.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. Lawyers, they were back in court today as Hudson's Bay awaits permission to start liquidating all of its stores after filing for creditor protection earlier this month.
CP24's Phil Perkins joins us live with the latest outside Hudson's Bay. A lot of increased traffic today, Phil.
Yeah, Arda, you're saying you go to this Hudson's Bay a lot here in Scarborough Town Center, and it definitely increased traffic, people looking for deals, unfortunately, as the Hudson's Bay facing liquidation of all 96 of its stores. Here at Scarborough Town Center, it is bookended by a Best Buy, by a Walmart, companies like that, American companies, may I add, companies like that are slowly but surely, inevitably putting Hudson's Bay out of business unless someone can come in and save it. A marketing guru who has potentially a lot to say about Hudson's Bay, its past, its present, and maybe its future, as Tony Chapman, host of Chatter That Matters. Tony, thanks for joining us here live on Live at 5. Hudson's Bay, how does it make you feel when you hear about a company that's been around for nearly 400 years potentially going under?
It's a very sad day for Canada. It was actually sad in 2008 when an American bought Hudson's Bay, Richard Baker, and even from that day, he seemed to be more concerned about the value of their real estate versus adding value to the consumer. And that was the beginning of the demise. But also Hudson Bay is facing a lot of the headwinds many other retailers are. The internet, the Amazon factor, COVID, the Canadian currency, less discretionary income, a Canadian economy not doing very well. All of those are headwinds against retail, and this is certainly a sign of the times, but one I think a lot of Canadians are going to feel very attached to, especially if you grew up and learned about Hudson Bay and everything that country meant to this great nation.
And do you find it kind of ironic that right now in this day and age, as we're dealing with this tariff war between us and the U.S., everyone's talking about buying Canadian, and they're doing that, but they haven't been doing it enough for Hudson's Bay, and now it's paying the price?
Well, listen, it's very difficult to really talk about what is made in Canada versus what happens in Canada. But Hudson's Bay, again, a lot of people still think it's a Canadian company. It hasn't been one for quite some time. And the reality is they were, at the time when department stores reigned, they offered two things that consumers love: convenience, everything was under one roof, and choice. Well, Amazon put all of that in the palm of your hand. And who's going to go up 5 escalators to go to a mattress department where there might be a handful of mattresses, nobody there to serve you, when you can go down the street to a Sleep Country Canada and have every possible mattress with experts? So they got caught between not delivering the kind of service that people want or offering the choice and convenience that they once stood for. And when you don't march in step with the times, when you don't march with the consumer, invariably what happens, you can squeeze all the value you can out of your balance sheet. You can do everything they've done, sell all the real estate, but ultimately you're just piling Band-Aids and Band-Aids on top of a festering wound. And that wound is something that's going to be impossible to repair. We're going to say goodbye to Hudson Bay. I hope some smart Canadian entrepreneurs buy the trademark, buy the signature iconic colors, bring out the blankets, bring out some of the items that we still have nostalgia for. But in terms of department stores, those days are done.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean about the escalators, and you have to look at the map to see what floor I have to go on just to go to the men's section. It's 5 elevators if you go to the main one, right at Queen and Yonge. So you talked about a smart Canadian businesswoman who might be looking at Hudson's Bay, its rights, its colors, those iconic blankets. If they were to purchase the rights, how could they reinvent Hudson's Bay for the future, for this changing retail landscape?
We look at Doug Putman, a Canadian who's bought HMV, Toys R Us, all these distressed retailers. You do it with entrepreneurship. You realize the fact that those signature colors are important. They should have a small Hudson's Bay pop-up boutique at every airport so people could bring a piece of Canada back with them. They should be looking at Hudson Bay Adventures, the experience economy, because Hudson Bay still stands for ecotourism, because that's where the origins of the roots. I would reinvent the brand that way and stop thinking about this as a bricks versus clicks and really understand is that what the iconic elements of Hudson Bay stands for. They could bring out signature maple syrup. I mean, they could do a lot of different things that we attach Canada to that come in under the banner of Hudson's Bay, but not with the real estate that they have, not with the labor, but really focus on the online. Work with Shopify, another great Canadian company, and I tell you, some entrepreneur could do very well if they can buy the trademarks. If that has to come with everything else that goes with it, no one's going to touch it because they have too many liabilities and not enough assets to make that business work.
Right. We see that with Zellers. We saw some Zellers pop-ups. I think it actually was in the Hudson's Bay, and that seemed to garner a lot of attention from people. Maybe something like that.
Well, that's what Richard Baker tried to do. He tried to kind of put together these little tactical things, but a pop-up Zellers store, you're going to need a pop-up Hudson Bay. That stands for something. Zellers is something far in the past. Walmart came in and did we do it for less, better? So, or the lowest price of the law, better. What Hudson Bay, though, to me, is it still says Canada, the good old days. And we all pine for the good old days of Canada when we seemed to be a country that was united. Hudson Bay can play in those roots, the retro, the sentiment that's happening right now, the fact that we're getting united because of the tariffs from Trump, and do a really smart marketing approach. But it's going to need fresh blood, entrepreneurship, somebody that understands the internet, understands how to fly fish in that content. And when they do a pop-up at an airport where people want to go home and are willing to pay a premium to go home with a piece of Canada. You leave Costa Rica, you go home with a stuffed animal that represents some of the animals you saw, like a sloth. Coming out of Canada, there's lots of other things they can do. But again, in the mindset of Baker and his company was all about the real estate and how can I extract value for my shareholders, you got to be focused on how do I bring value to my consumer. That is the difference between retail, a place to buy, and retail, a place to be.
All right, Tony Chapman, he's a marketing guru for a reason, the host of Chatter That Matters. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Chat soon.
Yes, sir. All right, Lena, Arda, a lot of information and some good ideas for the future of Hudson's Bay. Back to you.
I took some notes.
Yeah, really interesting conversation there, Phil. Thanks so much for this. We're going to switch gears now. It's 5:37, 16 degrees. Let's get a check on that evening drive with our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Siayabwa. Adjoa.
Yeah, Lena, it has been quite the busy afternoon. And as you guys were talking, another problem popped up for commuters heading home on the Don Valley Parkway. So northbound on the Don Valley Parkway, just through these trees, you'll see there is a collision. Does have the center lane blocked. It's always busy on the Don Valley Parkway as you navigate through. So expect those slowdowns. Also problems that continue on the 401. This is the 401 eastbound on the approach to Bayview. You can see that the left lane has been blocked following this multi-vehicle crash. Already seeing slowdowns from the 427. Then on the southbound 427, finally, it's accessible again. We had the southbound 427 ramp that took you to the eastbound 401, westbound 401 actually. It was closed because of a serious collision involving a transport. They're just zooming in on the ramp. So it looks like it hasn't fully been reopened yet, but it should be in moments because they just cleared the last of those vehicles. Also problems happening on the 401. I missed this one. This is on the 401 westbound just as you make your way through the 407, right laid out with a stall and another stall. This is on the Toronto bound lanes of the QEW just as you make your way on the approach to Bronte. It is the right lane that is occupied. Outside of camera view on the westbound 403 at Waterdown Road, crews dealing with a collision. It's blocking a live lane. I'll send it back to you, Arda and Lena.
Thanks, Adjoa.
Welcome.
The City of Toronto has provided an update on its response to the rising rate of coyote attacks, saying that problem animals should only be killed as a last resort.
For more on this, let's go live to CP24's Steve Ryan. Steve.
Yeah, Lena, the park where these coyote sightings have been and some of the coyote attacks have been is in this park near Fort York Armory. It's a beautiful park just off of Strawn, and it's a popular spot for people to take their dogs. And over the past 4 months, there's been many reports of coyote sightings, coyote attacks on dogs, and at least one dog was killed as a result. So today, the City of Toronto got recommendations from a panel of coyote experts, if you will, people who are specialized in coyote behaviors. And what they found was that the coyotes associate people with food. So they are advising people not to feed the coyotes, and the aggressiveness when it comes to the coyotes attacking dogs, the panel says that that is as a result of the mating season, and this is why the coyotes were so aggressive and harming a couple of dogs, including killing one of them. So we did hear from the deputy mayor today, and she spoke about this panel and their recommendations and what the city is doing about this problem here in Fort York. Here's what she said.
The report will also be considered as we move forward our Downtown Coyote Action Plan, reporting in May to the Economic Development Committee and as part of the city's overall review of the strategy by the end of this year. We will continue to work on this so that residents can feel safe in their community and that the city is well prepared to manage these situations moving forward.
People are being advised when they are in the park with their dogs to keep those doggos on leashes and don't let them run free, because it was the dogs that have been running free that have been getting most of the attacks. Send it back to you guys.
Thank you so much for this, Steve. It's 5:41, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5.
The Premier's office announces permanent plans for the future of the gas tax. We're going to explain next. Welcome back. The provincial government is moving along with plans to slash the Ontario gas tax permanently.
Premier Doug Ford's office confirmed the move today, moving forward on his campaign promise to make the cut permanent. The 5.7 per litre cut to provincial gas tax was first introduced in July of 2022 and has been repeatedly extended, dropping Ontario's tax rate on unleaded gasoline from 14.7 cents per litre to 9 cents per litre.
And Doug Ford and his new cabinet will be sworn in tomorrow. NDP leader Marit Stiles spoke to reporters at Queen's Park today, and she was asked about what she wants to see.
At the end of the day, this cabinet must reflect the priorities of Ontarians. And what we saw in the last government and the last cabinet was a health minister who didn't think that the doctor shortage was a major concern. We saw a transportation minister who can't open transit projects, and an infrastructure minister who just won't answer questions at all. We do need to see some change from this cabinet, and we need to see a cabinet that reflects the priorities of Ontarians.
Hundreds of cyclists gathered at Queen's Park today to protest the removal of bike lanes.
They opposed the Premier's bill that'll see lanes removed from Bloor, Yonge and University Avenue. Cyclists say ripping out the lanes puts them at risk, doesn't address congestion, and it's bad for the environment.
Premier Ford told reporters at Queen's Park today that bike lane removal will happen, but it won't begin on Thursday.
I've been very clear. I'm not against bike lanes. I'm just not. Even when I was a city councillor and with my brother Rob, we built more bike lanes, believe it or not, than David Miller, but we put them on secondary roads. And we're just talking about 3 roads. So like 97% of all the bike lanes are staying. And I'm all for, putting these bike lanes on secondary roads instead of main arterial roads. When you have 1 and 1.5% of the people using the bike lanes and 70% of the people driving, I think this is a no-brainer. So we're going to continue moving forward.
It's 5:46, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Prime Minister Mark Carney announces plans to secure the Arctic by boosting our ability to detect threats. More on that next.
Welcome back. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced plans to boost Canada's military footprint in the Arctic.
Carney made the announcements during a short stopover in Iqaluit on the return leg of his first official trip abroad. The plans will see the expansion of the Canadian Armed Forces in the Arctic, and the use of Australia's over-the-horizon radar tech to monitor threats from China and Russia.
And Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke on the military investments being made in the Arctic.
Today, I'm announcing that our government will be working with our long-standing defense and security partners, Australia, to build a new long-range, over-the-horizon military radar system. This is an investment of more than $6 billion in the most advanced and efficient radar system. The over-the-horizon radar system will enable Canada to detect and respond to both air and maritime threats over our Arctic faster and from further away. It will, most fundamentally, keep all Canadians safe.
Carney says he doesn't have any plans to visit Washington at the moment, but he hopes to have a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump very soon.
Statistics Canada has released inflation figures for February.
Let's take a look at those numbers now. Inflation shot up 2.6% in February, showing a surprise jump after the sales tax break for the holidays ended in mid-February. This was the first time in the last 7 months that the consumer price index pushed above 2%. Inflation would have risen by 3% if the tax break wasn't in place. The latest inflation figures come after the Bank of Canada cut its policy rate last week in hopes of softening the blow from Donald Trump's trade war.
A group of released Israeli hostages spoke publicly for the first time today, calling for an immediate return to ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas.
Today, the ceasefire has collapsed. For the 59 hostages still held in Gaza and their families, this moment brings renewed fear, not only of the ongoing attacks, but of a breakdown in negotiations that could bring them home. Every effort must be made to prevent further loss of innocent life and to ensure that diplomacy continues. This war must end, and all hostages must be returned to their families.
The pleas in Tel Aviv come after Israel renewed attacks on the Gaza Strip after weeks of a ceasefire in the war. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the strikes and says what he says was a Hamas refusal to change the ceasefire agreement.
Hamas refused offer after offer to release our hostages. In the past 2 weeks, Israel did not initiate any military action in the hope that Hamas would change course. Well, that didn't happen.
People could be seen searching through rubble of a destroyed building in Jabalia following the offensive. Medics in Gaza say more than 400 people have been killed and another 500 wounded. The largest assault on the Palestinian territory since the fragile truce began in mid-January. Hamas has warned that Israel's new airstrikes breached their ceasefire and put the fate of hostages in jeopardy.
It is 5:52, 16 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. Astronauts stranded in space for 9 months should finally be home soon. We're going to have more on their long-delayed journey back to Earth next. We're giving you live pictures of the capsule carrying Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore. Stay with us as our coverage continues.
Welcome back. After more than 9 months in space, 2 NASA astronauts are almost home. Their SpaceX capsule is expected to splash down very soon off the coast of Florida.
Yeah, all eyes on this. And you know who's watching this really closely? CTV science and technology expert Dan Riskin. Dan, thanks so much for joining us. Everything about this is fascinating. We're now minutes away from splashdown. We're going to try to bring up some live pictures if we can. Okay, we have those now. We're keeping our eyes peeled for that big moment. What are we looking at, Dan? What's happening off the coast of Florida?
Yeah, so that capsule should be splashing down about a minute from now. It has come in from the atmosphere, went through a period of time where it had so much plasma burning up on the front of it that it couldn't make any communication. So there was a period where they couldn't see the craft, they couldn't hear from the astronauts, sort of everybody holding their breath, waiting to hear connection again. That happened, and pretty soon after that, some small parachutes started to deploy. That slowed it down a little bit, and then those big chutes that you see, the main chutes, deployed. And now what you're seeing is a view from down on the water. So you can imagine if you were off the coast of Tallahassee right now on a fishing trip, of course they'd kick you out of the water because the spaceship's coming. But this is what you would see in the sky, and that's what it looks like on board. 4 people ready to be home.
Yeah, live images from inside the capsule. This is so cool.
You know, those astronauts must be going through a lot. Can you tell us a little bit about what they're going through right now?
Yeah, I mean, so you've got an astronaut and a cosmonaut who sort of, everything's going the way they expected when they got in a spaceship, months and months ago. But 2 of them have been in the news because they thought they were going for an 8-day trip back in June. And then their spaceship wasn't working that well, and they had to send the spaceship home without them. And Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams have been on this changed mission. They went from an 8-day mission to a 9-month mission, and they've been on the International Space Station ever since. Some people have been calling them stranded, but that isn't really the case at all. And NASA's done their best to sort of push back on that narrative. These are astronauts that are trained to do work in space, and they just got moved to a different mission. So I'm sure if you ask them, and people have, they're happy to be in space. They're astronauts. That's what they want to do for their time. If you give them a choice between 8 days or 9 months in space, they'll always pick the 9 months, and that's what they got. So that is finally coming to an end for them with this splashdown, and it's going to be an exciting piece of that story.
Yeah, so Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams have been waiting to get home for about 9 months. They're getting closer to that moment, Dan. We're now seconds away from their return to Earth, and we're getting ready for splashdown here. Walk us through what you expect to happen next. Here we go.
So they are in that capsule right now for the first time feeling gravity. And so you can imagine what that feels like. And there you go, splashdown. So now, for the first time, they're feeling the weight of their body sort of pushing them down into a chair. It's hard to imagine what that's like after 9 months of weightlessness. It feels terrible. What every astronaut says is that it's just a brutal experience to feel that gravity again. And they are going to be sitting there probably a good hour before that capsule gets picked up by a ship, lifted up with a crane onto a ship, and then they can be safely taken out of that capsule. And you can expect that when they are taken out, because their bodies are so weirded out by gravity after having not experienced it for so long. They'll probably be on a stretcher for the beginning of it, and then slowly eased back into walking around on Earth. So we can expect lots of images of them moving very slowly, but they've got to be feeling pretty cool right now inside their brains.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. It's just bobbing up and down right now in the water off the coast of Florida. This is quite incredible to witness this, isn't it, Dan?
It really is. I mean, it's just
Dan,
the fact that the drone exists that can give us that footage, all of it is just so breathtaking.
We've got to leave it there. Dan, thanks so much. 2 NASA astronauts finally back on Earth now. Thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.